Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Duke It Out Wrestling Podcast, where I, Duke, talk about events from the past, present, or future in the world of professional wrestling. Now, while I was watching the pay-per-view, and even before I watched Elimination Chamber tonight, I was thinking if I was either going to do a podcast talking about this pay-per-view, doing my old videos where I would rank pay-per-view matches from worst to best, or maybe do both. And I'm still kind of not sure which one I'm going to do, if I'm going to do both or not. I'm kind of going to let this podcast really do that for me, because if I talk about enough from this podcast, and if I don't think there's enough from what I've said that would just repeat into the other video, then I might not make the other video. And especially because for an event that's only 4 matches, it's really kind of hard to really consider one a worst, because honestly, whatever the weakest match would be on this card doesn't mean it's a bad match, because there honestly was not a bad match on this pay-per-view. Were any of them top tier match of the year candidates? No, unfortunately not. But it was still a good, solid show through and through. While, like I mentioned in my podcast for the predictions for this event, I was hoping that I would be a lot more excited for the event itself, especially since it's a Road to WrestleMania show, and I still kind of felt that way once the show was over, but I'm not too dissatisfied with it. I didn't think it was an awful show by any means. I just definitely think it wasn't as intriguing as a lot of the other Road to WrestleMania pay-per-views have been over the past few years. But overall, the show itself was pretty solid. Both of the chamber matches delivered enough. Both of the title matches delivered enough. And for the question of what was in the box, well, the answer to if that was satisfying depends on the person, and I'll get into my opinion in a little bit. I will first begin with the first match of the main card, which was what I was expecting, the Women's Elimination Chamber match, which was Tiffany Stratton against Alexa Bliss, against Raquel Rodriguez, against Rhea Ripley, against Kiana James, and against Asuka. Now, I thought this was honestly the best match of the entire main card. And I thought this was a very fun and clever Elimination Chamber match. All 6 women were clearly trying to do everything they could to bring some creative spots in there to make it as memorable as possible, even if the result was a bit predictable, which I think, in a sense, both chamber matches were, but I think this one really played with its benefit a lot better. I think that all the women here got a lot of really fun and creative spots, especially Raquel Rodriguez. Even though she did not win this match, and a lot of people were hoping she would, they really gave her a lot of time to shine in this match. While she was not the winner, she was probably the MVP of the match itself, doing that awesome power slam to Kiana James through the pod, and then power bombing Asuka on top of Kiana to lead to her pinning both of them at the same time, Roman Reigns style. I thought that was an awesome spot to really boost Raquel even further, especially for post-WrestleMania, because that is where I'm guessing that the real push for Raquel is really going to go down. Now, the chamber match, it started off with Tiffany Stratton and Kiana James, which I thought starting with Kiana James was the right call, because like I mentioned, Kiana James was clearly the least known out of all of these competitors and needed a spotlight moment, and she got multiple of them here. While she didn't get as much of a spotlight moment as, say, a Raquel Rodriguez, she still stood her ground and proved herself to be there, and she earned that spot and did a really good job. And a lot of other really cool creative spots in this match throughout as well. A lot of the eliminations were done very well, like the first elimination of Alexa Bliss with Asuka spraying the mist onto her, and then her immediately getting rolled up by Kiana James, I believe. And then the eliminations kind of went in the typical pace that you'd usually expect these ones to go down. Kiana James was then eliminated afterward, along with Asuka, with the double pin. And then Raquel was then eliminated by Tiffany Stratton with a really cool spot, because it seemed like Raquel was about to get Tiffany, and then Rhea Ripley does a really cool rolling senton off the top of the pod, which leads to Tiffany Stratton doing the greatest moonsault ever, or I always forget what she calls it, but she hits the moonsault, pins Raquel Rodriguez, leading to the final two being the top two women of this match, pretty much when it comes to star power, with Rhea Ripley and Tiffany Stratton. It was really cool to get to see some sequences between them, because if I'm not mistaken, we haven't seen a singles match between Rhea Ripley and Tiffany Stratton on the main roster just yet. So to get this little glimpse here was a lot of fun, and obviously, like I predicted, Rhea Ripley ends up pinning Tiffany Stratton with the Riptide to get the win, to be the opponent for Jade Cargill at WrestleMania for the WWE Women's Championship. I think, especially with the fact that Bianca is clearly not going to be able to compete for this year's WrestleMania, this was the next best thing to spotlight Jade. And if you're not going to get Bianca, who has been Jade's built-up opponent since the day she arrived in WWE, Rhea Ripley was probably the second best option, and they went forward with it, and I'm glad about it. I hope the match turns out really well. I do wonder who is actually going to win. I do have a feeling if Bianca can at least come back for a segment at WrestleMania, maybe she comes out after, or maybe she comes out, costs Rhea the match, but then still attacks Jade afterward to build to some confusion. Maybe. We'll see. But overall, I thought this Women's Elimination Chamber match had some very creative spots. All the competitors did really well. And while I don't think this is one of the best chamber matches of all time or anything, it was definitely my standout match for the entire night. Then next up was the second not women's chamber match, the second women's match on the show, Becky Lynch versus AJ Lee for the Women's Intercontinental Championship. I did start this show a bit later. I was helping some friends of mine move, and so when I came back, the show was already at least 2 or 3 matches in. And so I unfortunately did get spoiled of AJ Lee winning the title before I watched the match. So if I was doing like a list ranking video, AJ Lee and Becky Lynch might be at the bottom of the list when it comes to ring quality, but at the same time, it was a really damn good match. I thought this was really entertaining. AJ Lee did a really good job in her first singles match back in more than a decade. And I thought that Becky and AJ had some pretty solid chemistry. I thought it could have been exploited a lot better if there weren't some interference spots. But with this story, with the storyline between Becky and AJ, it does make a lot of sense for them to really use as many interference or down ref spots as they could. And they especially took advantage of that when Becky tried to get the turnbuckle exposed. Jessica Carr was distracted trying to get that back on there. And then Becky pushes AJ over to her, and then Becky goes for a kick. AJ gets out of the way, and Becky kicks Jessica Carr, leading to her being down for a while, where AJ puts Becky Lynch in the Black Widow, and Becky's clearly tapping, but obviously the ref is down. And Becky tries some more cheating tactics afterward, like getting a chair and DDTing AJ onto the chair, and she's still kicked out. And while with the end result, I was almost predicting it. I was literally while I was recording the podcast, I changed my mind and decided, oh, you know what? There's going to be a heel victory on the show. Becky Lynch is going to win. I should have stuck with my gut. AJ Lee is the new Women's Intercontinental Champion in Chicago. I was very excited to see her get that big moment, and I really do wonder if we're going to continue this storyline into WrestleMania. I kind of feel like they have to, just because what else do you have for either Becky or AJ going into WrestleMania? But I feel like what they'll probably do is maybe make it a triple threat and add an extra competitor in there. Who they would choose? I don't know for sure. I'll probably make that prediction a little bit later down the road. But overall, AJ Lee and Becky Lynch was a pretty damn good match. And AJ Lee winning, while I was thinking it was going to be Becky, I think AJ winning was the right result. And match number 3, we have got Finn Balor versus CM Punk for the World Heavyweight Championship. This was definitely the most predictable match on this entire card, even though there were a couple of matches that were already pretty predictable. Especially with the fact that we already got the match with CM Punk and Finn Balor in Ireland. A lot of people just kind of figured if Balor wasn't going to get the title then, he's probably not going to get the title now, and especially not right before this blockbuster match with Roman Reigns and CM Punk at WrestleMania. While the fact that pretty much everyone who was watching this match knew that Finn Balor wasn't going to win, that could have drained the tension a bit, but the talents of Balor and Punk were shown once again. I don't think this was as stellar as their match on Raw, especially for the fact that the crowd in Ireland was so incredible that night. And especially that was the first time we got to see one-on-one action between CM Punk and Finn Balor, I think, ever. So there was a lot more intensity with that, but that doesn't mean there weren't some amazing things in this match. With Finn Balor, what really impressed me the most about this match with him and the match itself was his really smooth counters into roll-ups. He's really good at that. One of my favorite spots of his was he repeats this spot a few times anytime he's in the ring with Rollins. He'll do anytime when Rollins will do the superplex and Falcon Arrow combo, Balor would always catch him midway and go for the roll up. And he did that and he did that as a counter to the GTS that looked very similar, gave me kind of vibes to that. And him kicking Punk, him drop kicking CM Punk through the barricade, I thought was another really cool spot. There were still really cool moments in there despite everyone knowing Punk was going to win, along with Punk getting a really grand entrance in Chicago, getting the whole build up like the Michael Jordan peak era. And I believe, and I wrote this down on my phone to make sure that I got the announcer's name right. Ray Clay, who announced for the Chicago Bills, also announced CM Punk's walkout before he actually made it to the ring, which was really cool. And I loved the jacket that CM Punk was wearing, tributing his dog Larry. I thought that was a really nice touch. But anyway, after CM Punk did beat Finn Balor after a really damn good match. Punk was bleeding from the mouth for almost half of it, so it was a good moment to show Punk a bloodied up warrior, and then even better when AJ Lee walked to the ring and then celebrated with him. I thought that was a wonderful moment. That was kind of a necessity for a Chicago pay-per-view. And you have Punk and AJ there, you got to have them celebrate together, especially when they're both now champions. And another really cool thing that I think they added with this match was that post-match, Punk and Balor shook hands again. Now, I was wondering if, in my previous podcast, I was making the prediction / hope that the Judgment Day was going to cost Finn Balor the match, leading to a Finn Balor babyface turn. But they still did. But their booking still led the opportunity away for Finn Balor to turn face, because usually a heel isn't going to shake hands with his opponent after he loses, and I think that's going to make Dominic and JD see some more weakness in Finn Balor on Raw, and then lead to the Judgment Day turmoil to probably a singles match with Dominic and Finn at WrestleMania. If you want to add JD into the mix as a triple threat, that would be freaking awesome. But we'll see how it goes. But I think even though it didn't go down the exact way that I was hoping, this match still did everything it needed to build up for the right things for WrestleMania, along with another pretty damn good match between Punk and Balor. And before we get to the main event, we finally had the question answered of what was in the box. In my podcast, I was predicting Chris Jericho, even though I really wasn't having much hopes that it actually was Chris Jericho. And after I posted the podcast, it was right then when I was starting to see some social media predictions of a lot of people thinking that it was going to be Danhausen. And then I was like, I wasn't thinking about it, but at the same time, it makes a lot of goddamn sense. And then earlier, it was either earlier today or yesterday. I believe it was yesterday, where Danhausen was removed from the AEW roster page while Chris Jericho still remains on the AEW roster page. So once that popped up, I was just kind of like, oh, okay, there's almost no way that it isn't Danhausen at this point. And sure enough, it was freaking Danhausen, one of the greatest comedy characters of pro wrestling's modern era. If you aren't as familiar with Danhausen, watch his work in Ring of Honor and his short stint in AEW, where unfortunately he was just kind of benched for a while. There's a lot of people that speculated that he took a lot of the heat of the whole CM Punk situation in AEW. I don't know that for sure, but it is really cool to see Danhausen finally make an appearance again in wrestling. But the unfortunate thing with this debut was that when he first walked out, the crowd seemed a bit excited. There was a bit of a pop for him. And then as soon as he got to the ring and the lights blacked out and they moved on to the next segment, they were slowly starting to boo. And I don't know if that's necessarily them booing Danhausen or them just booing the booking of this mystery crate / box angle. And for me, I thought this was a really fun debut for Danhausen. This could just be because I'm a fan of Danhausen, but also I thought this was a really cool way to debut the character. All the women dressed up as Danhausen doing the little dance while he walks out, I thought was a very nice touch. The very little touch of pyro I thought was really funny. And plus, I'm a Michigander. Danhausen is also from Michigan and trained to be a pro wrestler in Michigan, so I always gotta support my fellows from the Mitten. And even if he wasn't from Michigan, I would still be very excited for Danhausen. I'm a big fan of comedy wrestling and comedy characters, and Danhausen is one of the most fresh comedy characters that pro wrestling has right now. And I do feel bad that there was boos at this moment, because I don't think that was Danhausen's fault. I think that was strictly from fans getting way too overexcited on what it could be, and that they were building up of what was in this box, and the fact that it was a comedy character who doesn't wrestle in matches as much as, say, a Chris Jericho. I could see why there's some people upset with that, but I'm genuinely very excited for what they could do with Danhausen. Am I confident that WWE could book Danhausen well? I don't know for sure. I could see either route. I could see him being a huge highlight in backstage segments on TV. He keeps making more money in merch, or they book him for a couple weeks and then they just don't do as much with him throughout the year. I could see either scenario, but I really want to see him shine in some backstage moments and work with some other talents in WWE that we haven't gotten to see him work with before. We'll probably still see him have some backstage moments with some AEW alumni like CM Punk or maybe even an Ethan Page. I think that'd be really funny. But I would love to see him do some fresh segments with someone like a Drew McIntyre or a Sami Zayn, or whenever Kevin Owens comes back, a segment with KO and Danhausen would be fucking comedy gold. And you can't deny that. That would be incredible. But yeah, I am bummed that this Danhausen debut has led to a lot of piss poor reactions from some people. Hopefully they get over it sooner than later, because Danhausen is pure entertainment, and if you embrace the entertainment, then you're going to have a really good fucking time with Danhausen. Now, we get to the main event, the men's Elimination Chamber match. Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, Trick Williams, Javon Evans, and almost was blanking, LA Knight, and Logan Paul. Now, this was a pretty damn solid main event, and I don't think this was anywhere near one of the best chamber matches of all time, mainly due to the fact that there was a lot of interference stuff that kind of harmed it from a quality perspective, but from an entertainment perspective, it was still there the whole way through. And in the beginning, the entrances had some very memorable moments, especially when it comes to Trick Williams. That was by far Trick Williams' best entrance on the main roster so far. The podium that he was on reminded me of Bobby Roode from the Glorious Days, and he interacted so well with the crowd. His aura is insane, and the shot of him going on top of the pod and just looking around at the crowd, and while they're all chanting, "Whoop that Trick," he is an aura gold mine for the company, and if they don't have a spotlight either match or sequence for him at WrestleMania, then they're really fucking up. And then the only other really memorable moment of the entrances isn't as necessarily a great moment like it was for the entrance for Trick Williams, because during Javon Williams, and I made the botch myself, Jesus Christ, when Javon Evans made his entrance, the ring announcer accidentally called him Javon Williams. And It is a bummer, and I was more so shocked by that actually happening because I don't think I have seen that WWE ring announcer named Mark Schunock. I don't think I've seen him make that kind of a name mistake before. And it could be a pass because it's someone who is more fresh to the main roster with both Trick Williams and Javon Evans, but the internet's going to have a fucking field day with that. I guarantee it. But anyway, the match started out with Cody Rhodes and Javon Evans, which I thought was a really, really good choice. I would love to see a singles match with Cody and Javon in the near future. And we got some very nice glimpses of that here. When the third entrant was the other recent NXT call-up, Trick Williams, and he also did some really good spots in there. And then after that was, I'm double checking my phone, believed it was Logan Paul. Yes, it was Logan Paul. And when Logan Paul came out, he became the instant heat magnet for practically the rest of the match. Because he eliminated 3 people in a row. He first eliminated Javon Evans with one of the most brutal looking pulverizers I have seen. Probably the most devastating looking pulverizer that I've seen. Either Javon actually landed on his head, and I really hope he's okay, or Javon sold the absolute shit out of that. But that did look really devastating. And then after that, Logan Paul eliminated LA Knight, which unfortunately for LA Knight, he was the victim of the invisible banana peel that was somewhere around the turnbuckle. And I saw someone already tweeted saying, "Oh my God, it's the worst botch ever." Like, yeah, sure, worst botch ever. Oh my God. It was a slight moment. It happens. It didn't distract anything from me too much. And LA Knight immediately walked it off and had some good moments in there for the rest of the time that he was in the chamber. And I'll mainly skip down to when it got to the final 3, because that's when things really started going down in the chamber. Because once it was down to Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, and Logan Paul, we had another sequence of the Masked Man where there was another cop-out that they've done on Raw and SmackDown, I believe, or just SmackDown, where they have a masked man come out, they take off the mask, and it's just a rando. And they had that happen at first, but of course, it was obviously a ploy to let another masked man walk into the chamber, attack Logan Paul, hit him with the curb stomp, so Cody Rhodes could take advantage and pin Logan Paul, eliminating him from the chamber. And once Logan Paul is eliminated, the masked man, the second masked man, takes off his mask, and it is revealed to be who we've all guessed to be the masked man. Seth freaking Rollins is freaking back. I was really hoping, not really hoping, I was pretty much guessing that Rollins was going to be able to come back before WrestleMania, but there wasn't any guaranteed reports, so I'm really glad to see that Seth Rollins is healthy enough to compete at WrestleMania. Now the only real question is, are we going to do another Seth Rollins-Logan Paul match at WrestleMania? Or is there the chance that Braun Breaker is going to be able to recover from this hernia surgery in time for WrestleMania? Obviously, the latter is a much more enticing option. But I think if they do go with Seth Rollins and Logan Paul, or if that's the way they have to go because Braun can't come back at that time, maybe they should do a tag team match. Because I was even thinking that with all these mysterious masked men, maybe it could have been another stable that Seth was working on behind the scenes while he was injured. Maybe a Grayson Waller, who knows? But I think that'd be really cool to have Logan Paul and Austin Theory team up against Seth Rollins and another partner at WrestleMania. I feel like they wouldn't do that. I feel like if Logan Paul is the only Vision member to face Rollins at Mania, they're going to go with the singles match, but maybe the tag match would be a bit more of an enticing choice. But then it got down to the final 2. Once Logan Paul was gone, the 2 most highly likely winners of the chamber match itself, Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. Now, I was predicting Cody Rhodes, and the more that the match was going on, I was like, either maybe they are going to pick Randy, but I was really questioning if Randy was going to turn heel and reveal himself as the attacker of Jacob Fatu, or if Drew McIntyre was going to cost Cody. And obviously, we got the latter. Drew McIntyre took advantage of all the Seth Rollins commotion. The door was still open for like a solid 5 minutes. And so Drew McIntyre ran in, hit Cody in the back of the head with the belt, and then tried to hit a Claymore. Cody dodged it, but then Drew and Cody kept fighting a bit more. Randy turns Drew around for an RKO to then Cody immediately catches Drew to hit him with the Crossroads. And Randy Orton immediately takes the opportunity to RKO Cody and pin him while Randy is sticking his tongue out like a madman, which was such a hilarious visual. And Randy Orton wins the chamber. He is going to be facing Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania for the undisputed WWE title. Now, do I think that Drew versus Randy is going to be the actual singles title match for Mania? No. Like I mentioned in my predictions for the show, this is obviously going to lead to a multi-man match for the title. We've got Drew, we've got Randy officially, and now the other two that are most likely are Cody Rhodes and Jacob Fatu. And like I mentioned earlier, if you want to add Sami Zayn to the mix, a 5-way would be a ton of fun. Maybe make it an elimination match to add some more intrigue there. Maybe, but I thought this was a pretty solid chamber match. I think the interference spots in the end did harm this from being an extra good chamber match, especially compared to the men's and women's chamber matches from last year, but it was still more than solid enough. When it comes to my overall thoughts of the show, I thought it was a pretty damn good show. Especially for a 4-match card with the segment of Danhausen debuting. It was all very rock solid. Nothing that was absolutely groundbreaking, but nothing that was an absolute stain of my time either. I still enjoyed myself, but I am hoping that once we get to WrestleMania, we can finally get back to the top tier quality WWE premium live events that we got very spoiled with over the past couple of years. But those are my thoughts on the Elimination Chamber. I might make a worst to best video tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. But please let me know what you guys thought of the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view / premium live event in the comments down below. And please don't forget to like this podcast, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell for notifications. And of course, duke out your opinions below in the comments.